So Maniac Magee, this is the Newbery Award-winning author, Jerry Spinelli. If you see a gold foil award on a book, there's a good chance it was a pretty good book. They don't just hand those out to anybody. This has been on a number of really well-written books for kids. The Newbery honor is for the most distinguished contribution to American literature for kids. This dude's written tons and tons of books. I've seen him speak quite a few times. He's an excellent author, one of my favorites. He's got a knack for writing realistic fiction, especially realistic fiction that kids enjoy. So, this is called Maniac Magee. He wasn't born with the name Maniac Magee. He came into this world named Jeffrey Lionel Magee. But when his parents died and his life changed, so did his name. And Maniac Magee became a legend. Even today, kids talk about how fast he could run, about how he could hit an inside the park, a frog homer, how no matter how snarled, would stay that way once he began to untie it. Little girls jumping rope would chant, "Maniac, maniac, he's so cool. Maniac, maniac, don't go to school. Runs all night, runs all night. Maniac, maniac, kissed a bull." But the thing Maniac Magee is best known for is what he did for the kids from East Side and for those from the West Side. He was special, all right, and this is his story, and it's a story that is very careful not to let the facts get mixed up with the truth. Maniac Magee by Jerry Spinelli. The title page says, or the dedication page says, for Ray and Jerry Lincoln. I don't know who that is, but they must have been important to Jerry Spinelli. Before the story, they say Maniac Magee was born in a dump. They say his stomach was a cereal box and his heart a sofa spring. They say he kept an 8-inch cockroach on a leash that rats stood guard over him while he slept. They say if you knew he was coming and you sprinkled salt on the ground and he ran over it, within 2 or 3 blocks, he would be as slow as everyone else. They say. What's true? What's myth? It's hard to know. Finsterwald's gone now, yet even today you'll never find a kid sitting on the steps where he once lived. The Little League field is still there, and the band shell. The cobble's corner still stands at the corner of Hector and Birch. And if you ask the man behind the counter, he'll take the clump of string out of a drawer, and he'll even let you see it. Grade school girls in 2 mills still jump rope and chant, "Maniac, maniac, he's so cool. Maniac, maniac, don't go to school. Runs all night, runs all right. Maniac, maniac, kissed a bull." And sometimes the girl holding one end of the rope is from the west side of Hector, and the girl on the other end is from the east side. And if you're looking for Maniac Magee's legacy or moment, that's as good as any, even if it wasn't really a bull. But that's okay, because the history of a kid is 1 part fact, 2 parts legend, and 3 parts snowball. And if you want to know what it was like back when Maniac Magee roamed these parts, well, just run your hand under your movie seat and be very, very careful not to let the facts get mixed up with the truth. There's a really significant line in here. That means like an important line. See if you can explain what this means, or you can share what you think this means. He says, that's okay because the history of a kid is 1 part fact, 2 parts legend, and 3 parts snowball. What's that mean? How is the history of a kid, any kid? 1 part fact, 2 part legend, 3 parts snowball. Let's start with the fact. The fact's really easy, right? What's a fact?
Like something you know for sure.
You know for sure?
It's like that's about like the story and stuff. Like whenever they want you to like give examples of the story.
Yeah, so a fact is something you could find right in the story, right? Like you could prove it and say, well, that's a fact. I could find it in the book. Like it's printed. We can prove it, right? Like we can see it. It's tangible. It's a fact. It's something that we can prove. So a fact about Presley is that he's got boots on. A fact about Pax is that he was wearing his hat backwards today, right? Could we prove that? We could prove it. Yeah, those are facts. Those are not up for debate. Those are real things. All right. Legend. Then it says 2 parts legend. How is a kid's story 2-part legend? Have you ever seen the movie? This reminds me a lot of the movie Sandlot. Totally different story, but have you guys seen the movie Sandlot?
Yes.
All right, so there's a legend about the beast, right? The dog that lives on the other side of the fence.
Yes.
And the legend is a really big part of that story. What's a legend?
Like someone was like great.
Something that's totally not true.
All right, so 2 definitions. D said that it's something it's like something that's really great. Like Kobe Bryant is a legend in basketball. Michael Jordan is a legend in basketball, right? But then Caitlin said something else. What'd you say?
Like it's something that's been told for like years, but it's not true.
It's something that's been told over a number of years, but it may or may not be true, right? Like legend as in a story that typically is made up. Sometimes we embellish the facts. I love my mom dearly, and she is really good at embellishing the facts. She tells great stories, but her stories are like very well embellished. Like they make the stories more colorful, right? So embellished, or to make somebody maybe seem bigger than what they are. There are legendary stories that may or may not be true. So a legend is something that may or may not be true. It might be a story that's been told for a long time about people. Like the legend of the beast in the Sandlot. Spoiler alert. Is everything that they believed about the beast true in the Sandlot?
Yeah.
No.
Well, if you've ever seen the Sandlot, they come to find out that the beast is not all he's cracked up to be, right? It's a legend. All right, and then this last part, 3 parts snowball. How could a kid's story be 3 parts snowball? Pax, what do you think?
Maybe because every time maybe it like snows or something happens, you make something happen where something does to someone else, like a snowball fight.
Okay, maybe it has something to do with actual snow. Maybe there was a snowball fight at some point in the story. Maybe. How do you make a snowball?
You pick some snow and roll it.
You have to have sticky snow.
All right, so you got to have the right kind of snow. I heard Kaylin say you got to get a bunch of pieces of snow, and then what do you do with them?
Roll them up.
You like put them together, right? And so I think there's an inference to be made here for the higher level thinking type questions. How does that snowball relate to Maniac Magee? It's taking bits and pieces of a story, packing them all together like a snowball, right? And once you put them all together, can you separate all those pieces out of a snowball?
No.
Not really. Like they're all one thing, and now it's a snowball. It's a thing, but you can't really like take it apart very easily. So all those stories, those legends, the facts, the myths, the truths, the lies, the stretches of the truth, the embellishments, the legend of him, it all comes together to make one person, right? And somewhere in there is the real person, but it's all kind of packed together. All right. So this is part 1. The parts are important to a book. Do you guys know why an author would put part 1? Because they're going to put a part 2? Yes.
Cause like you maybe like different like scenes or like places in the story, and you like make become a movie.
Yeah, a lot of times books that have parts in them, they could make for a good movie. Kaylin said that sometimes there might be different scenes or different parts of the story. That wouldn't make sense if it was all one, so the authors kind of like separate them out, right? So we have these different scenes or parts of the story, and then together they tell the whole story. Go ahead. Sure. All right, part 1, chapter 1. There are no titles for the chapters, just so that you know. Maniac Magee, please don't shake the table. Thanks. Maniac Magee was not born in a dump. He was not born in a house. Sorry, he was not born in a dump. He was born in a house. A pretty ordinary house, right across the river from here in Bridgeport. And he had regular parents, a mother and a father, but not for long. One day his parents left him with a sitter, and they took the P&W high-speed trolley into the city. On the way back home, when they were aboard the P&W, when they were aboard, the P&W had its famous crash. When the motorman was drunk and took the high trestle over the Schuylkill River, Schuylkill River, I can't say it, Schuylkill River. At 60 miles an hour, the whole caboodle took a swan dive into the water. And just like that, Maniac was an orphan. He was 3 years old. Of course, to be accurate, he wasn't really Maniac then. He was Jeffrey Lionel Magee. Little Jeffrey was shipped off to his nearest relatives, Aunt Dot and Uncle Dan. They lived in Hollidaysburg in the western part of Pennsylvania. Aunt Dot and Uncle Dan hated each other. But because they were strict Catholics, they wouldn't get a divorce. Around the time Jeffrey arrived, they stopped talking to each other, and then they stopped sharing. Pretty soon, there were 2 of everything in the house. 2 bathrooms, 2 TVs, 2 refrigerators, 2 toasters. If it were possible, they would have had 2 Jeffreys. As it was, they split them up best they could. For instance, he would eat dinner with Aunt Dot on Monday and Uncle Dan on Tuesday, and so on. 8 years of that. Okay, so he was 3. That goes on for 8 years. How old is he now?
11.
He'd be 11. Then came the night of the spring musical at Jeffrey's school. He was in the chorus. There was only one show in one auditorium, so Aunt Dot and Uncle Dan were forced to share at least that much. Aunt Dot sat on one side, Uncle Dan on the other. Jeffrey probably started screaming from the start of the song, which was Talk to the Animals, but nobody knew it because he was drowned out by all the other voices. Then the music ended, and Jeffrey went right on screaming, his face bright red by now, his neck bulging. The music director faced the singers, frozen with his arms still raised, and the audience faces began to change. There was a quick smatter of giggling by some people who figured the screaming kid was like somehow part of the show. Some funny animal maybe, and then the giggling stopped and eyes started to shift and heads started to turn because now everybody could see that this wasn't part of the show at all. And that little Jeffrey Magee wasn't supposed to be up there on the risers pointing to his aunt and uncle bellowing out from the midst of the chorus, "Talk! Talk! Talk, will ya? Talk, talk, talk!" And no one knew it then, but it was the birth scream of a legend. And that's when the running started. 3 springy steps down from the risers, girls in pastel dresses screaming, the music director lunging, a leap from the stage, out the side door, and into the starry, sweet onion grass smelling night. Never again to return to the house of 2 toasters. Never again to return to school. Can kids not go to school?
No,
No.
then their mom's not or dad or anybody that takes care of them will get arrested.
Yeah, legally, kids have to be in school, right? Unless parents sign them up for homeschool, or there's some kind of medical situation. But we do our very best to make sure kids are in school. One of the most important reasons is that school is a very safe place. And so that's our job, is to provide a safe place for you guys. When you come to school, it's a safe place. And then if it's safe and you're cared for and well loved, then the learning part of it can take place. So school's a really important place for kids. But Maniac Magee is different. He decides to run, and he is not going to be in school anymore. But his parents are dead, so they can't really do anything for his parents. His aunt and uncle, he's clearly left. Maybe that's part of the legend. Maybe it's part of the story. Maybe it's true. Maybe it's not. Chapter 2. Everybody knows that Maniac Magee, then Jeffrey, started out in Hollidaysburg and wound up in 2 mills. The question is, what took him so long, and what did he do along the way? Sure, 200 miles is a long way. He started running, and he ended up from one town to the other 200 miles away. Sure, 200 miles is a long way, especially on foot, but the year that it took him to cover it was about 51 weeks more than he needed, figuring the way he could run, even then. The legend doesn't have the answer. That's why this period is known as the lost year. And another question, why did he stay there? Why 2 mills? Of course, there's the obvious answer that's sitting right across from the Schuylkill is Bridgeport, where he was born, yet there's other theories. Some say he just got tired of running. Some say it was the butterscotch crimpets. Some say he only intended to pause here, but that he stayed because he was so happy to make a friend. If you listen to everybody who claims to have seen Jeffrey Maniac Magee that first day, there must have been 10,000 people in a parade of fire trucks waiting for him at the town limits. Don't believe it. A couple of people truly remember, and here's what they saw. A scraggly little kid jogging towards them, the soles of both sneakers hanging on by their hinges and flopping open like dog tongues each time they came up from the pavement. But it was something they heard that made him stick in their minds all these years. As he passed by them, he just said, "Hi." Just that. "Hi." And then he was gone. They stopped, they blinked, they turned, they stared. People didn't say that to strangers. Do I know this kid? People didn't just say hi to strangers out of the blue. We'll stop there for today.